All right. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We have a very exciting speaker here today with us. We have Emanuel Aguilar from Patron Gallery. Thank you for everybody that's been tuning in for these for the past couple weeks. I know it's not optimal during these COVID times, but I am so thrilled that we've been able to speak to so many wonderful people in the Chicago community and beyond. Next week, April 25th, we have Holly Cahill, and that will be the final speaker for our speaker series. So please make sure you tune into that. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Emanuel. Hey, Emanuel, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good, good.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much
me.
for being here. Yeah, absolutely. You can feel free to take it away.
Oh, okay, cool. Hello, everyone. I'm really thrilled and honored to be here. As you may or may not know, I am an alumni of Columbia College, and so it's, for me, always a home and holds a very special, dear place to a lot of the beginnings that are part of my present today. So Columbia College is a very special place for me. So I would love, I'm really happy to be able to share with you guys today a little bit of my journey, a little bit about what I do at the gallery that I founded 6 years ago, which is called Patron. And I'm going to share my screen and just sort of share with you my website, which is where most of everything that I've worked on over the last few years is. But also, I tend to just want to keep things pretty casual, and conversational. So if there's a question or anything that you guys really want to talk about or like me to elaborate on, just I think chat it, right? And you'll be able to, and I'm happy to answer it. So I'm going to share now. So I graduated from Columbia College from the fine art department and the marketing department in 2009. So about 11 years now, which seems like it was just yesterday. And one of the things that really stuck with me is that Columbia had a really sort of interdisciplinary sort of setup where you could take classes in different departments and learn how to connect bridges between different sort of focuses. And it's one of those things that sort of stuck with me, and that as I navigated my own career through the art industry, really helped me as a tool to be able to create bridges and use what I learned in marketing and art, and use what I learned in the fine art department in marketing my business. And when Darby asked me to sort of join you guys today to talk, he posed a question to me, which was, what is something that I didn't know then that I know now that I wish I had? And I think that one answer to that, which I think there's many, but one answer to that sort of speaks to being a student at Columbia is that I wish I'd known that what I was learning as a fine art student, that all of those skills of critical thinking, critical problem solving, putting together the puzzles of life, that I was learning skills to better prepare myself for those types of obstacles in life and in business that I didn't even think I was learning about. And so one of the beautiful things about creating art and thinking about art and talking about art is that your brain gets wired to problem solve, to connect the dots, to be an investigator and solve any what puzzle from all different angles. And so looking back, I started thinking a lot about artwork when I was, problem solving in my own career and in my own life later in years. And I think that that's something that I wish I'd realized sooner, but I think that it's still something that I really, really am grateful to my education in art. So after I graduated, for some time, I was the director of a gallery here in Chicago called Kavi Gupta, along with my business partner, Julia. And we both launched Patron Gallery in 2015. The focus of the gallery was to not only fill a void in necessary additional stages for artists in Chicago, but to also support a lot of the artists that stem from Chicago. So we have a lot of amazing programs in the fine art departments in the schools here in Chicago. And for a long time, after students and amazing artists would study at these schools, they would leave for one of the coasts. They would leave for New York, they would leave for LA, they would leave for Berlin. And very few people would stay in Chicago. And so as Julie and I were navigating the idea of opening up our own gallery, we wanted to make sure that we made a contribution to a place that not only was dear to both of us having grown up in Chicago, but that could use a widening of the sort of stage for artists here. So we decided to stay in Chicago and launch this gallery here. The name comes from, if I can move this. So, sort of here, the name is very important to us. It's when conventionally you think of a patron, I think a lot of people think of a client, think of someone that's buying something, right? But we wanted to sort of look at the broader definition of what a patron is. And that is someone much more of a guardian or a caretaker, someone that is dedicated to supporting something in the long run and doing what we do as gallerists, which is working very intimately with artists and launching careers from the very beginning up. Was important that the gallery's name reflected that, and it wasn't just like Emanuel and Julia, which we did try. We thought maybe it'd be cute if like Julia Emanuel was like some fake name, but at the end we landed on Patron, and I feel like it's been very fitting in our mission. So the program started with a lot of Chicago-based artists, artists like you see here in our artist page, Daniel G. Baird, Alex Chitty, Myra Green, people that were working and had been working and studied, for that matter, in Chicago, and had decided to make their permanent residence here and establish their studios here. It was important for us to start there when we were constructing the program. Other things that we took into consideration when we were developing the program was that we wanted as diverse of a program as possible. So voices from all parts of the world, all different types of experiences as Americans as well. We wanted to make sure that we were always considering a greater ratio of female artists, of queer artists, things that we knew, having worked at the galleries for some time, weren't always the case in a lot of sort of contemporary art programs. Most contemporary art programs tend to be predominantly white male, just as sort of we've sort of been in a lot of discussion as of recent in press and whatnot, that the museums as well have always skewed to that ratio. And so we wanted to like really be able to make sure that we were conscious about how we were developing our program and that it was as diverse and consciously giving a platform for those voices that don't have as many options in the systems of the past. And so from there, the program has grown to international artists, all parts of the country. And it is something that we're very proud of because, as it turned out, a lot of these artists also that now live somewhere else have a connection to Chicago, having come from one of the schools locally themselves. And the front page gives you a little bit of an idea of the different kinds of things that we do. So one of the things that was really important to me and that I really learned, that was a big part of my time at Columbia as well, was that not only was I in the fine arts studio program, but I was also heavily invested in taking classes in the art history department. And I developed, a very strong sort of desire to make sure that I was a gallerist that approached my job as a curator and considered the academics of what it means to support artists. It's not always selling art. Selling art isn't the entirety of what it is that I'm interested in doing and that a lot of gallerists actually do. What I wanted to do was define myself as a gallerist that did what the name of the gallery was, that I myself was a patron also, that I was supporting artists, that I was there for them in every other way other than just selling their work. And so a lot of what we do in the gallery is that we develop a lot of the artists' institutional and museum and projects that go beyond the gallery and having a show at the space. So the front page is always going to give you Jamal Cyrus is our next show, right? And that's in the gallery, but then it gives you an idea of all of these other projects that we're involved with, such as this solo exhibition by Harold Mendez, who's also a Columbia College alumni from the fine art department, who has this solo exhibition in Richmond. We worked on that show with him, right? And we worked with side by side with the curators to develop his exhibition there. This is another type of institutional project, but it's more so like how does an artist develop an outdoor public sculpture, right? And like how does the finances that go into that, the sort of logistics. So this is a Jenny C. Jones essentially it's a wind harp. When wind passes through the grounds of this museum, which is the Clark Museum in Massachusetts, it plays a sound and it's activated by the wind, right? So that's one of the other things that I really am passionate about is like realizing these crazy projects, to have the artist dream up these sort of larger than life things and being able to walk them down the path to see those realized. Here's other shows by local artist Caroline Kenneth at the Paul Art Museum, Montgomery, and the New Museum in New York. And so all of these things are part of my everyday, along with just sort of putting on the programming in the show at the gallery and then selling the artwork, of course. All of these other things are part of it as well. And as of today, I'm also talking to you from my desk at the gallery that we've been at since our inception in 2015. And it's the last day that I'll be on this desk because we are actually moving the gallery to a new location as of tomorrow. And so we're really excited about that because the space itself is this historic theater that is on Chicago Avenue. And it's a theater that was built in 1914. It was a vaudeville theater and it was called the Alvin Theater. And in the 1970s, it became a Spanish language theater. And a really sort of beautiful thing for me that I learned in the last few weeks was when it was a Spanish language theater and my father had just emigrated to the US, made his way to Chicago. He worked at a gas station a couple blocks away and they would come see movies here because they were in Spanish. And so when I showed him a picture of the building, he's like, I know that place. I used to go there in the 70s to watch movies when I was, a teenager that had just arrived in Chicago. But it, as a reason was, most recently was a dance studio. And so, for a lot of reasons, we needed more space. We needed more, easier access to the space. There's not a lot of parking where we are now. We wanted to be near other galleries, which I think is always an important thing, is community. So we found this place during COVID, and because of COVID, we got a great deal, and we're opening it next week. So I hope all of you can come down next Saturday to our grand opening, and check out the Jamal Cyrus show that's on our front page and see this space. But one of the things that we're doing also with the design of this building, and here's another cool angle of it, and everything around it looks the same. Like that liquor store next door is exactly the same, but I wouldn't go under because there's a lot of maskless drinking. Is that we wanted to create a space that sort of took down a lot of the conventions or sort of the assumptions that a lot of people have about art galleries. Art galleries tend to be very unapproachable. There's a lot of frosted glass. There's a lot of tall counters, and there's not so much of a welcoming sort of perception of galleries. And from the beginning, we've always wanted to undo that kind of attitude towards the business. And in our current space, one of the things, the way we did that is that we took down the frosted glass. You can walk through our entire space and be able to ask anyone any questions. So with this space, we're continuing that, but there will be other things to it, like sitting areas for you to be able to like take a seat, read some books that are related to the exhibition, and be able to spend time reflecting on the show. The sort of navigation of the space takes you past the director's desk, so you always have access to someone to talk to you about the show. But also we have a lecture hall in this space now, so we'll be able to have this sort of multidisciplinary, like multi-purpose room where we can have talks and we can have screenings. Essentially, we want to activate the community a lot more and be able to do things with an art gallery that, again, aren't just about selling art, but they really are about building community and building all these bridges. All of that stems to my sort of understanding of the power of friends and a sort of art family that really came to me, and being a studio artist and at Columbia. There was this amazing group of people that were there at school with me, and the from the professors to the fellow students, this is your wealth. This is your that's your those are the people that are going to give you opportunities down the line, that you're going to collaborate with, that are going to have all of these different roads and paths of opportunity to share with you down the line. And so art just happens to work that way. It's a community, socially based industry, and without people, it sort of ceases to be that special and that powerful. I think it's a lesson that COVID has taught us even more. It's like no one wants to see another painting or experience an art fair online. We want to go and see it, breathe it, smell it. We want to be in front of it. And so why not put our efforts and our energies, now having learned that lesson even more so, in producing spaces and encouraging community to be that much stronger in the future. So to me, I'm hoping that this space does that. We're a block away from all the other galleries in the neighborhood, and that in itself is a reason alone to be on this block. Everything else aside, we hope just also just develops into a wonderful new space for the city. I'll go back to the website page, or I could just go back, but I mean, I'd love to answer any questions that anyone has, or.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I can't tell you how excited I am for this amazing looking space here. I think it's going to be such a great addition to that area over there. But first of all, so kind of going back to you working at Kavi Gupta and deciding to open Patron, what was kind of the impetus behind that? What was your reason?
A lot of personal and a lot of professional, and some of the personal was that I went straight from school into this position, and it was bridged by something I didn't really talk about, but that some of my fellow Columbia College students developed with me is that we developed a magazine called Jettison Quarterly that we started publishing when we were students at Columbia, and it picked up really fast and it had a huge audience, and it was really, really successful, but we didn't have the money to sustain it to its next stage. And while Jettison was rising, I was actually an intern. I was working at a different gallery because I started working for a gallery at 17 in River North, called Gino Albano, and it dealt with a lot of the images. And I worked through college at that gallery, but then as I was sort of my last year, I took an internship under who is now my business partner, Julia. So I was interning for Julia, and this magazine was taking off. And at one point there, Kavi just asked me if I would consider a more permanent position, and it just sort of rolled like that. It went really fast. The years flew by, and by the end of the time that I had spent there, I was tired. I was really tired. Things happened fast. I needed to reflect a little bit more on what I want to do. I used to joke with Julie, and I was like, I just want to go work at Chili's for 3 months and like serve some awesome blossoms and not think about it once I got home, like. And the thing is that, being a gallerist as invested with the artists and the sort of audiences as I am and Julia is, it's a lot of work. I mean, these are all my kids, like, and they all have feelings and obstacles, and they all want to reach their goals and their dreams, and I'm their support system. So there's a lot that goes into being a gallerist that really is taxing if you just didn't even sort of prepare. And so I didn't prepare. I just sort of jumped right in it, and I was tired. So that was one really big personal thing. But also, I think, like Julia had been there with Kavi for about 18 years when we left. We had been there a long time, and it just felt like we were ready for the next step and do something. We knew that there wasn't a lot of galleries in Chicago at that point. There's a lot more now, which is amazing. So we took a little bit of a break, a couple months after we stopped working at Kavi's, and then met up and we asked each other if we still wanted to do this, and we both said yes. We went on interviews. I went on some interviews with some really big galleries in New York and LA. One of the things that helped me clarify was that I didn't want to work at an even more corporate like gallery than where I already was. I wanted to do something that didn't really revolve around me meeting certain sales goals every month or whatnot. I wanted to have the freedom to take risks and support young artists and do it in a place where my rent wasn't 30 grand. So
Right. Well, I'm interested, you talk about like sort of having a place where you can take risks and things like that. How have you sort of structured Patron to give you some of that leeway?
So Chicago itself as a city is a big part of that. Our overhead is a fraction of what a lot more contemporary galleries' overhead is in New York and LA, London. No joke, like the rent that we have for this first space that we did for the last 5 years is probably what most people probably pay for a 1-bedroom apartment in New York, right? And so that in itself allows for a lot more sort of risk taking. What's the word? Like it really just takes it to a different level where you have a lot more space to take risks with financially, but also, in Chicago, we can have shows that run longer because we don't have to turn around exhibitions to continuously make money at a fast pace. And so shows can be longer, shows can be not necessarily commercial, right? Like the artists can take risk and just do the installative projects, do the films, do what they want in the city because the overhead is not there. And so there's not so much pressure on the gallery to sell. So Chicago's a big part of that, and it's a really sort of sort of fruitful place to be able to do that because um, we have an amazing community here, and everyone in the art industry throughout the country makes it through Chicago over the year. So they see the shows, they see all of the that's going on here, but um, it's not packaged, dictated by the market so much.
Right, right, absolutely. And it seems like you have such an amazing showing of artists here too that are all making such unique and interesting work too. And I'm also very curious about how you're finding these artists. Are they coming to you? What's kind of the relationship like there?
A lot of them, especially when we started, were friends. You know, Daniel G. Baird, who uh, came out of the UIC and teaches at the Art Institute now. He was Julie and I's preparator at Kavi Gupta. So we knew him personally and professionally that way. And we, you know, had watched him grow his practice from graduating to, you know, those first few years. And so we became really informed over the years on his work. And so that came from there. We were friends with Alex Chitty for many years. Um, you know, Myra Green used to be a professor at Columbia College, and I had known her through a lot of these sort of circles. One of the things that we do is we're always looking and thinking about timing, about when we can do something for someone, when we can't. So, but we're always looking. Some of these artists, like Jenny C. Jones, who's one of sort of the most sort of long, has one of the longest careers in the program, 30 years. I did my first studio visit 8 years ago when I was at Kavi Gupta. And so we just stayed friends. And it was one of those beautiful things when I was in New York, we went for a beer and I told her that I had left Kavi and that I was going to open this gallery. And she's like, so are you here to ask me to dance or what? And I asked her to dance, and here we are, right? So like, I think relationships are an important part, because even if we love the artwork, even if we love what the artist is doing, if we don't connect or we can't work intimately and like hands-on with the artist on it's just not going to work. And two, the timing has to be right. So we don't like taking on artists, even if we like their work, if we know that at this moment we can't do something for them, or you know, there's someone that is better suited for it, for that type of work or that sort of place in their career that they are. um it's sort of a way to sort of think about the job more than just sort of representing artists for the sort of novelty of adding all these names and like having all of these people in a program. It's like, if I can't do something for someone, it really doesn't matter. You know, I can support them in other ways, and Julie and I do that. There's a lot of artists that have an open door, like we have an open door or email policy where they're welcome to ask us questions, and we can help in any way that we can, connect them to other opportunities if we can. But yeah, there's so many ways to help artists.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really great question that just popped up from Joan here. And she asks, how would you advise young artists who have never had a studio visit outside of the school context to prepare for a visit from a curator or gallerist?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. That's an interesting question that I was actually just thinking a lot about, because someone did a studio visit with one of my artists, and they asked me after, and they're like, that person teaches, right? And I was like, huh, why are you asking? They're like, they just have a way of talking where it's like, you know, like, here is the PowerPoint. Um, I think that, one, you should know that your space, what's in your studio, the way that you keep your brushes, to what inspirational images you have on the wall, that's going to tell me instantly a lot more about you than anything you're going to share initially, right? Because there's got to be some ice breaking. So it's like when you go to someone's house, you learn so much by like the pictures or like the figurines they collect or like the way they decided to set up their space. It starts telling you little bits and pieces. Um, our spaces communicate, just the way that our bodies and our clothing and everything communicate. When it comes to a studio, I always look around and I'm looking around and I'm learning from the setup. Um, the other thing is to really practice talking about your work with your friends, with other artists, because I think one of the things that we forget about visual about art is that it's a communication through the visual, and if it's not communicating what we think it's communicating as the maker of it, it's not doing. It may be doing its job for you, but maybe that's not where you want people to understand of the work or whatnot. So I think that it's just having your language sort of uh, tuned, fine tuned, and sort of cater to what it is that you want this visitor to take away from it, is very productive. And it's one of those things that we do speak with the artist is that, um, every single person coming to your studio is a different sort of source of opportunities, right? They may be someone that can talk to someone. They may be someone that knows someone. They may be someone with an opportunity for you that is directly through them. And I think that thinking about these things helps in how and what you share initially. But it's a good question. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to open it up to the room here. If anybody else has any questions, you can throw them in the chat or ask them out loud. Feel free. Yeah, and also on YouTube, if you want to throw questions in the chat there too, that's I'm monitoring that as well. So by all means.
Oh, I see the chat stuff.
Well, in the meantime, I'm really interested in the switch between Kavi Gupta, kind of a more commercial gallery, and a place like Patron, which seems to be kind of a mix of emerging artists, some mid-career people from all around the world, and stuff like that. What are the differences there that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean they're both commercial galleries. I think one of the things that galleries do, and it's maybe to the point of studio visits as well, is that each gallery sort of tells you a little bit about the person that runs it or owns it does, right? And so the program, the type of artist, the way that the website's laid out and everything communicates some identity. But I think that the art world has sort of been going through a lot of changes in the last few years, and Patron is a commercial gallery just like Kavi's in any way. It's just the times change, and the way that doing business to me is different than it was 10 years ago when I was at Kavi's, right? The clients change, the way that you sort of our share artwork changes. Like Instagram wasn't as important 10 years ago. 5 years ago, we were going to an art fair almost every 2 weeks. Today, we're not going anywhere. Time changes the industry as much as time changes art practices. Um, all of it is a reflection of where we are in history. And so that aside, we did make a very sort of conscious decision that with the artists that we choose to work with, there is a promise to them that not only are we going to support them by being able to sell their work and thus they can make a living, but that we're going to think about the long haul, the long run. What kind of goals do you have 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Do you want an institutional type of career? Do you want to just have a market? Are you interested in museum shows, or are you interested in just selling? Right? All of these are different types of paths. And so at the gallery, we tend to want to focus um, on sort of academic trajectories and trajectories in studio practices that are mindful of wanting to have institutional shows and scholarship written about them and all that. So that's something that is really important in the way we do navigate the gallery.
Definitely. There's a question that rolled in from Anna that I'll read out for everybody viewing. Can you comment about your feelings about posting and overposting, the suggested etiquette for young artists?
Yeah, is that on Instagram?
Yes.
I or anywhere. I think that so Instagram is an amazing tool that I think you should use freely. The one thing, there's no such thing as, I think, overposting, um, as long as you're posting engagingly, right? Like I think that the one thing that I do see a lot of artists do that I think is really bad is that they post a lot about themselves, or I have this show, or look at everything like, and this is even like really big successful artists. Look at who I'm collaborating with. Look at where I am. Look at what I'm doing, but they don't tell me anything about their artwork or about their what they're thinking about or their research. I feel like that's a missed opportunity with a platform such as big as Instagram, is that it's very productive when you use it right and you remember that it's a megaphone to the masses, right? And that it gives people this sort of psychologically safe way to engage you and learn a lot about you without needing to have to like, um, you know, engage you directly in person or whatnot. So I think that the information on there just needs to be productive. I mean, if you're an artist and you really are dealing with really sort of topical or timely issues in your work and it's political, but then you're just posting photos of you having cocktails with different other art world people, I don't know what your Instagram's really doing for your work or your practice. So I think those are things that I would keep mindful. I think you can post as much as you want, but be productive with it. Don't waste the opportunity that Instagram is to communicate to the masses productively.
Yeah, and kind of going off that too, especially in a gallery setting, and clearly during these times of COVID where we have to be so far away from each other and socially distance and whatnot. How have you found any effective tools online that you can use to sort of promote the gallery and in any way like that?
Yeah, like we use social media. We use Instagram the most. I am a really horrible millennial when it comes to technology. I myself don't know how to use a Twitter or something like that, but I think that it's productive to keep your audience engaged. I think that there's a lot of like sort of technological ADD that goes out there, and so a lot of people, they see something, but unless they're constantly reminded of your presence or the gallery's presence or programming, you get lost in the shuffle of how much information is out there. So I think that goes to the constant flow of communication and postings, right? If it's done effectively, it's very beneficial and it helps remind people that you're there. And the gallery certainly aims to do that with our social media posts. Um, I think there's a lot of creative ways to use it. I've talked to a lot of artists about having, because during the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic, I used to love watching walkthroughs of exhibitions or watching artists just do studio visits and talk about their work in their own voice and film themselves talking about the work. I find those very like very productive and informational. We do videos for each show where the artist walks through and tells you about the work in their own voice. It's one thing for me to talk about the work. The artist is talking about the work as well. It just adds that much more sort of connection to where it comes from. So I think that using technology for as supplemental platforms to expand on exhibitions is a very amazing thing that we can do these days.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a question that rolled in from Adam Brooks here. Most artists have goals for their careers, but what are your goals for the gallery and the program, especially in the new space?
Yeah. First, I think the gallery grew really fast, and I'm very humbled and honored by that, right? Like, I never could have imagined that it would have happened in 5 years, the sort of growth that the gallery has had. So I think that this move in itself is that sort of push to take it to even more higher levels than I do. I want to do a lot of the sort of community-based programming that I've wanted to do since the beginning, but um, didn't have the staff for, didn't have the hours of the day for. So, I have a dream that we have our program in place a year in advance, and we can share it with the different schools in the city so that different classes can use the programming in their classes. I have a dream for the gallery to host more than just our own public programming in terms of talks and screenings. Um, I want the space to be used not just by the gallery but by the community. So that's one of the sort of dreams that I have for the actual physical new location. Um, One of the things in terms of the future of the gallery beyond that is that one of the challenges that I think a lot of people don't talk about, even gallerists locally, is that the art world is very New York centric. And so you see this group of artists that I represent. A lot of them have New York galleries, or a lot of them are in conversations for New York galleries or London galleries. The thing that is difficult about navigating that is that part of that desire for a New York gallery, a London gallery, is that these artists want bigger support systems, right? There is this sort of idea that the New York gallery is bigger and has a wider audience when it's not really true. The audiences for art is very small globally, and most galleries, even one in the middle of nowhere, Kansas to New York, everyone for the most part has the same audience. But there's this competition, right, where a lot of Chicago becomes secondary. Chicago becomes just a place where the artist rose and then they go to a bigger gallery. I want to be able to create the kind of gallery that can sustain and maintain its program, even if these artists go to other spaces. We've been able to do it thus far. The gallery needs to grow to be able to do that. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that these relationships are very important to us. But it's also, there is this sort of investment that goes into fostering emerging careers. You put a lot of money and time into building these careers. And when they finally get to a certain point, a big gallery comes and takes them and actually makes profit from them, right? Everyone makes a profit except the person that planted the seed and grew the little sprout into a tree. And so to me, as a gallery in Chicago, I would like to change that. I would like it to be able to make it so that a Chicago gallery is no longer secondary, but it is, an international gallery that just happens to be in Chicago.
Mhm.
Right. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You guys have not only sustained that gallery, but I would say, you mentioned it grew so quickly. It seems like you guys have really thrived doing what you do. And I'm wondering, what do you know why that is? Is it just sheer luck? I mean, I can't imagine that's the case, but do you have any things that you could share as maybe effective tools to keep a really great gallery going?
Yeah. I mean, you remember that you're dealing with the to remind yourself you're dealing with people. Um, Artists aren't factories. They're human beings that have feelings, and their work and their production is very personal to who that individual is. And a Midwestern lesson: be kind to people. be approachable, talk to people. You never know who's who or who has what connection or who's going to benefit you or the gallery in the long run or later on, or I think that one of the things that we focus on a lot is that we are very intimately involved with our studios, with our artists in their studios. um, I talk to them every week if I can. I talk to them about their work. I think one of the things that I've learned over the years so much is that when I visit a lot of really big artists living in New York who have huge galleries, I'll sometimes do studio visits just because I'm interested in learning more or whatnot. They'll tell me afterwards, they're like, "Oh, no one's been in here to talk about art in years." And it's one of those things that like would baffle me. It's like, "Oh, what do you mean? You work with the biggest gallery in the world. You mean that there's no one that talks to you about the development of your art?" No, they come in here, they pick what they want, and they take it, and then they go and sell it. We've always tried to maintain a conscious focus on the human beings involved in everything. And so uh, I think that that is a very big lesson in itself beyond the art world, right? You treat people well, and they'll treat you well. I mean, wasn't that like, it's funny, I always think about Game of Thrones for that, like the lesson of Game of Thrones: treat people well and they'll kill for you, treat them badly and they'll end up killing you, right? Like there's something about maintaining a sort of being mindful that people are people and that they want to be treated well.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, we're coming to a close here. I have one final question that I like to ask all the guests that come along in terms of like the greater Chicago art world. Do you have any organizations or art players in the world that you think are really doing some amazing things for artist equity and keeping the art world a fair and good place?
Yeah, in Chicago or just,
Yeah, specifically in Chicago, that'd be fantastic.
I mean, I think Chicago has a wealth of spaces that are doing amazing things. There's so many amazing residencies like Acre. There is the Chicago Artist Coalition. There is Roots and Culture. There's all, one of the things that I love about Chicago is that Chicago's art community and the art world here is deeply rooted in this sort of alternative space history that stems from this sort of need that I spoke about earlier, where there hasn't always been a history of a lot of spaces for the support of artists locally. And so what a lot of individuals have done over the years here is that, they're art students in all these schools, they just create apartment galleries. And from those apartment galleries have been born a lot of amazing institutions. Heaven Gallery, you said you had, here is one of them. It's been around for 20 years supporting artists. Um, uh, Roots and Culture was started by an individual who's an artist himself as well, and like wanted to create a space for local artists to be able to take risk and show work and share it with the community. So I think that there is a wealth of these spaces locally uh, that are very, very um, productive and really pave the way locally. I mean, the Hyde Park Art Center is amazing. Totally.
Awesome. Well, this has been such an amazing talk, and thank you so much for coming. Do you have any final remarks or any plugs for anything coming up?
No, I mean, I hope you guys come by the gallery if you want to check out the new space, and always feel free to ask me anything if you see me around. Stop me, or if I'm at the gallery, I'm always happy to share about the work or what's going on. And remember, everyone at school with you. That's going to be the map of opportunities down the road.
Awesome. Well, that was such fabulous advice, and thank you so much for being here. remember that next week we have joining us Holly Cahill, which is going to be a fantastic speaker, and that will be the final speaker of this year's SoFA Speaker Series. So I think it's been such a fun event to put together, and I really appreciate everyone who's come out to all of these sessions. Anyways, keep in touch and